Hi, I'm Chili Dilly, the personality pickle. Packed in a jar for the freshest flavor. Served cold in a sack for you to savor. So dainty to eat, no muss, no fuss. An ideal snack for all of us. Crisp, tender, and tasty with a bit of spice. Buy one now. Taste how nice. Snack bar clerks will knock themselves silly, speeding your order for a real Chili Dilly.
Thank you for joining the Guild Complex Presents Exhibit B. Those images were brought to you by old school television and, drive-thrus. That stuff was actually edited by our very own co-host, Ian Wojciechowicz. And I'm James Stewart III. We're bringing you another episode of the Guild Complex Presents Exhibit B, right from my very own dining room on Chicago's North Side.
Yeah, and just in case people don't know out there, Chili Dilly, that's not fake. That's real. They're not a sponsor. We haven't seen any of the Dilly Dollars. We're open to it, but that's just a recommendation from the Exhibit B team. Is go find yourself a Chili Dilly.
Find it. We'd also like to take a second and acknowledge the rest of the Exhibit B team, including co-curator J. Howard Rosier, director Alex, also producer and co-founder. We'd also like to thank Mary Cerny, who's editing and doing the chat thing right now.
Yeah, in the chat. So now that you've met the whole crew, including Chill Dill, we have to introduce you to our wonderful sponsors, the Guild Literary Complex. They help us put on all these shows. Wouldn't be possible without them. Since 1989, the Guild Literary Complex has served the Chicago community through innovative programming that highlights the intersections of marginality, the power of community, and the impact of arts and activism. They build on Chicago's rich literary traditions through vibrant storytelling and radical inclusion, advancing access to and from the margins. The Guild Literary Complex supports and encourages voices of all backgrounds and experiences to tell their truths, whether they're literary powerhouses or talented newcomers. The Guild views literature as a vehicle of connectivity and aim to merge seemingly disparate groups across Chicago's 50 wards. There will be some links for you in the chat. Please check them out. They're a great organization.
Throw them some Dilly Dollars or regular ones.
Yeah.
One last thing before getting on with our show proper, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we're on stolen land. The result of acts of genocide perpetrated by white settlers in the United States of America against this land's native inhabitants. I recognize the complexity of myself, a black non-native person, in doing so, but I do with an open heart and as an act of solidarity between this nation's most oppressed peoples. This land was, is, and forever will be that of the Potawatomi, Kickapoo, Peoria, Miami, and the Sioux. I use past, present, and future tenses because Native people are still here surviving and thriving. Indigenous people are leading voices in the struggle against white supremacy, environmental justice, and against police brutality. To find out more about the land you're on, we recommend you download the Native Lands app. I'd also like to add, as we take time to honor Indigenous people of the United States and to acknowledge the atrocities committed against them through settler colonialism, we feel it's appropriate to acknowledge similar atrocities as they happen, like we're currently witnessing on the Gaza Strip, as Israel kills Palestinian children and is forcibly removing Palestinians from their homes. Settler colonialism is always the acquisition of indigenous territories and resources, which means the indigenous inhabitants must be eliminated. This is exactly what we're witnessing and that we should all speak out against.
Agreed. All right, and tonight we've got a show for you where we are going to explore video a little bit more closely. We're going to explore the relationships between sound and image and text.
Our first performer, we have Anaïs Duplan, a trans poet, curator, and artist. He's the author of a book of essays, Blackspace on the Poetics of Afrofuture, a full-length poetry collection, Take This Stallion, and a chapbook, Mount Carmel and the Blood of Parnassus. He's taught poetry at the University of Iowa, Columbia University, Sarah Lawrence College, and St. Joseph's College.
Dang.
This is Anaïs Duplan reading from their forthcoming collection, I Need Music, released by Action Books, 2021.
I was about to say, why would one sit in a courtroom with your head in your hands? I'm not sure that's totally right, but we'll go with that for now. I find myself suddenly wondering how I would render this here figure by I can hear the black bodies chirping. Similarly, I need to delve into this particular image and grab the pieces and move them around as a kind of purging. I don't really mind separating the existing figures out into littler figures. The justice system acts in just the same way. Multiple police officers crowded around their capacity for pleasure. The willingness to be in a sort of genre hell lovingly for some time until sense returns around a new theme, change and disengagement. There have to be limits to the creative activity, something linking me back to the activity of writing, such as the imperative to leave the hands in contact with the weapon. It's difficult to make a mental image of where we need to go as a culture. It's time, in other words, to take the next step. If writing poems is about letting go of aboutness, of a sense of putting coherence to an image, what does it do to you that you can't possibly touch what's right? It's inherently uncomfortable to not feel where a narrative is going. An uprising, as it should be said, is without cause or reason. Central Park and other parks around New York City have witnessed a large amount of crime, not least the crimes by police against young black men for not doing much of anything. Tell me what your credentials are, the police might ask, the kind of synthesis of order and chaos in this here meeting. In fact, I can find that exciting. There was somebody flippant, almost processed in my words before. First, what gesture, what emotion the psyche is ever in need of new words, gonna discover it within certain limitations. Being a churched individual, for example, that doesn't make any sense. Devotional texts really are in your head. I myself am guilty of feeling anger at black men seen to be doing not a single thing. That's why they mean limitation breeds creativity, the charcoal and multiple blacks and grays. Not only these hues come into focus, the psyche states, the roundness of it, and its incorporation of most beliefs, if not all, or rather, to create erasures by eliminating certain erasures. One has to believe that this lack of free play and lack of regulated play is showing up in other facets of our society. I'm angry by I did not have to cry, and yet there's not a single thing else I can do. It's not a single thing else we can do. The system works this way. Why would you sit in a courtroom? I have to scroll to touch this particular image in its entirety. I don't feel as if I'm allowed to ask that question. Oh, it's so painful to try to bring that emotion into view. I try to touch the whole image. One would make a mental image of traveling along a churched roadway, the kind of mystery that remains inside a black subject. How did it sound to be at the Attica uprising? Why are these pictures full of men who gather to decide the fates of them folks, and men who gather when they've been gathered by those other men and would be gathering elsewhere if they could, except they can't? The line work, Sean Leonardo's line work, you can't even make a mental image of how gentle he's doing it. I'm thinking of Sean, how he asks folks to believe in gestures, to decide breath and death. No one wants to spend time with death. Too much chaos is painful and unintelligible, which is why these systems exist, to get some order out of death. Alternatively, you could make a mental image of a process where writing a poem about a courtroom scene goes much differently than this. In fact, just as Hongzhi Liang said, we can attach the images later on to the text, a different posture instead of leaning back. It's a tragic groove that comes from mirroring a photograph. Having a mirroring process is like cleaning or organizing. A little chaos feels really good. I'm thinking into how these men sitting in rooms are talking to each other. I, for one, think I might even lose the ability to converse. I hate these pictures of men killing other ones by thinking and talking about it. It's like the impossibility of seeing the whole image is what we hold. On the other hand, too much repetition also breeds harshness. By your psyche can't tolerate the lack of new words. The sort of mystery that comes only from immersing oneself into a subject, so that nuance begins to emerge where it wasn't before. It's a level of synthesis that must emerge, that can only emerge. Being up for seeing that one is guilty or innocent by the groove of a series of conversations with power. Power has to go through the multiple levels of processing. Don't make murder a matter of choice. Act on your animal instincts. No, chaos is really boring. It's men mirroring pictures of other men. How is it possible to talk in that context? I feel sick. How many men are in these images? Cleaning it out, the visual field, there's ordinarily a flaring out and thoughts, and then coming back into focus. I wanted to touch the whole image anyhow. I didn't have plenty of time to see. I can't live with this here man's head, the smallness of it peeking up, so delicious and disgusting at the same time. Comes the sexual release right at the right time. The kindest matter this figure's done to me is let me get away and leave me alone. I have to touch the whole thing. Systems exist to get chaos down to a manageable level, to build a structure that could house me, that would feel my faults and hold, something I could feel on, inside of and outside and all over. Anyway, I can't sleep, and I'm beginning to feel that love, when I feel supremely connected, and usually I am alone and usually walking somewhere, I touch someone and I feel happy to touch them in a manner I can't describe aptly, like I'm so happy they're here and a light fills my body. When I can no longer touch them, I make a mental image for a second that they are supremely happy, and then I don't believe in them anymore, except in the abstract, as I'm doing now. Leave the rest of us out of it. Gentleness comes from repetition, the blankness and largeness of the space that comes between men. What happened to it? There be sour notes and trees in the image. If you're going to kill, do it. Don't decide to do it, to take them out and put them out. As a society, we practice getting into neutral or positive territory. Do we focus on the justice system? Yet when thinking into justice, I feel hunger. Can you imagine that? You touch the justice system. It ought to rely on balance and fluctuation rather than the hardness of the institution which doesn't get at humanity. No, you can't skip the steps to humanity. The psyche is disorganized. That statement was originally about Sean's images, but now we're somewhere different.
And that was Anaïs Duplan. Thank you. That was powerful work.
Yeah, awesome. So our next performer this evening is going to be Sam Heaps. Heaps is a genderqueer writer and visual artist currently living in Philadelphia. You can find more of their work in Entropy's Woven series, Communion Arts Journal, Taco Bell Quarterly, which is an incredible follow on Twitter, Giallo Lit, and many others. Heaps holds an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I've heard of that place. And teaches at the University of the Arts. Their debut is forthcoming from Clash Books in 2022. And these are excerpts from Heaps' debut collection, a series of 94 letters to a man called A.
20. In the story you write, it is funny the way men despise memoir, call it cheap and easy, but write stories that are simply their lives under the guise of fiction, taking credit for the actions of others. As if you invented my madness and I did not carry it into your kitchen. I am crying. My head is out the window so I can smoke and cry while you fuck me. I stop you before you finish. I ask you to play the same Jeff Buckley song, we know which, over and over and over and over and over. I finish crying, I sit down, and I drink a Corona. My interiority is insignificant. What, reader, was I thinking with my torso half out that third-floor window? It's not a question the story cares much for. A. Sometimes when I fantasize about fucking women, I feel I must invent a man to watch and condone before I can finish. This book, then, is maybe not as pompous as an attempt to give my life narrative, but instead merely an attempt to have my life seen, to make myself visible to you, A, clearly defined, manifested publicly and clearly, A, domain of male, phylum of author, order of husband, genus of father, species of adored. Will you look at me so that I have permission? Where do they go after the tawdry affair is completed? When the man is returned to his good woman and all is right in the world, when there was no one to look at the needy home-wrecking wretches anymore, where do they go? I would be so grateful if they disappeared, as we assume they must. Their stories must end once the man will no longer look at them, invisible and in substance interchangeable. But I am not gone. I'm still bathing myself and feeding myself and shitting and grieving and taking long mournful walks. A, you leave. And before you leave, I am stroking the tears from your cheek. 1. Maybe 8 here. Probably this goes on for several years. Your uncle believes he is a certain type of man when he is another, answering the door in sheer Mormon garments so that I can see the outline of his genitals. As a punishment for an unknown crime, your uncle shaves your thick brown hair. In a story, I compare it to the bark of a felled redwood. Wavy. Your nose is dusted with freckles, and they are illuminated by the buzz cut. Your aunt choreographs a dance for us. We are virtues, I believe, feminine virtues like faith or purity. There are games where you are the wife and I am the husband. I think I remember you liked to feel pretty in a way that you weren't often allowed, and in a way that was forced upon me. I pull you back on the swing and release. Maybe we kiss. Yes, we are children, but can we not be lovesick too? 66. You say you love my discipline. I say come with me. Your English was bad, but my Spanish was worse, pushing. On the balcony the morning after the mountain in thick clouds so that we might be alone. On the hike back down, you cannot keep up. I am too strong for you seeping back into the world of man. I am embarrassed you have proven to be so delicate. 33. Before you fuck her, you fuck me. At a party in a penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows so that you can see all of Tokyo spreading around you and away, and it is impossible to feel less significant than you do when confronted with this view. I'm smoking chocolate cigarettes with a group of men, but follow you into a bathroom. I've heard the joke before. You have an aquatic dick. The shower running, or is the bath half filled up? I'm still smoking, not even completely undressed, writing you. Your thick, amiable face and shoulders beneath me. Your hands moving my hips. And I can hear S at the door, please don't. And I like it, that sudden reversal. Coming out, my clothes wet, and an earthquake, stirring the party for a moment. Glasses tipping, a porno falling off a table, the city continuing to sprawl beneath us. After the big one, many of you trickle back to Philadelphia, all with the telltale signs of trauma. It is too much to be on the train, sudden noises. You describe the rolling of the asphalt, the relentlessness of the weight. Back, a few days later, you buy me a pizza. Sometimes I will walk past your room and can hear the two of you together. I imagine you touching her body, the way she prefers your touch to mine. You later will publish a small poetry chapbook about your time in Tokyo. I'm sure I have no interest in it. A. I'm in proximity. I'm in close proximity. I'm in proximity as the wife grows round with new love. I'm in proximity for the ultrasounds. I'm in proximity for the birth. Your flushed cheeks at the coffee shop. A boy, a name, a sun sign. I'm in proximity as the boy grows. I'm in proximity as your family grows. I meet the boy, I love the boy. I'm in proximity to the boy in your home. He is like you, and I understand why people want this, to create more of the people they love. I do not approve, but when I hold him for the first time, I think I truly understand her desire. I am still in proximity. I am in proximity to your home, full of music and intellectual banter and food. I'm in proximity as I sit alone and write this, or paint, or teach my students blue essays about conquering grief, telling them through Rosgate to wander into a wilderness of sorrows and find joy. But they must know it is flat. It is too sad, they tell me. Where is the joy? I say again, through the sorrows, as if I can be convinced myself. I am in proximity to joy. I am not permitted to touch it. I am in proximity as you fix your marriage. I am in proximity as you sit up at night and tell her you love her, as you listen to her pain. I'm in proximity as you hold her hand and promise you will never hurt her like this again, crying. I'm in proximity as you promise her you are staying. I choose you, I love you. You choose her, you love her. I love the life we have built. I am here. I am in proximity as you touch each other, grateful to be close. Yours is a true love. I am in proximity, though. 64. I interrogate if perhaps I am getting off on these, enjoying replaying the memories, especially the bad ones, perhaps a little addicted to looking at my own wounds. The novel you send me, quote-unquote about me, the brothel where I whisper in your ear, my naked body on your bed growing younger and younger, the scene you write where I am sleeping and am passed around a circle of men, used. When I come to you, you partake. I've come to this too. So I'm not above believing you if you think I am enjoying this. I'm not above trusting your better and more intelligent observations. In your book, it turns out I was dead all along. Instead of the author, shouldn't we kill the muse? Give them some rest? A. At the neighborhood barbecue where I burst my shorts, an older photographer, an established artist, asked me to model for him one day. I do, but I think he is too kind to tell me the photos are not what he wanted. Another dream last night, sitting with him in a dark corner of my favorite bar in Jamel, and he has a suitcase and I have a suitcase. We have nowhere to go, climate refugees. The photographer says, should we fix the photos? And I say I am too old, but I am praised and I oblige. I sit in the dark corner holding a coat to my chest, and as the shutter clicks, I begin to cry. I perform my grief for you, A, my grief for all of you. And I shake my head and rend my clothing, and the photographer takes photo after photo. When the tears have stopped and I run the back of my rough red hands along my face, the photographer looks at the photos. Nothing here is worthwhile. Nothing here is beautiful. I tell him I am so sorry for wasting his time.
Okay, that was Sam Heaps. Thank you so much, Sam, for sending us work. Awesome to watch.
Our next performer this evening will be Rachel Swearingen. Rachel's the author of How to Walk on Water and Other Stories, winner of the 2018 New American Press Fiction Prize. Her writings have appeared in Vice, The Missouri Review, Kenyon Review, Off Assignment, Agni, American Short Fiction, and elsewhere. She's the recipient of the 2015 Missouri Review Jeffrey E. Smith Editor's Prize in Fiction, a 2012 Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, and 2011 Mississippi Review Prize in Fiction. In 2019, she was named one of the 30 writers to watch by the Guild Literary Complex. She teaches at the School of the Art Institute, Chicago.
Left Brain, Wolf Haley, Golf Wang.
Advice for the haunted. Any other couple would have thrown away the former owner's things and moved in. But 2 months after buying the apartment at auction, Nick and I were still using it as a playhouse. The former owner's name had been Natalia. We had inherited all of her possessions, her pantry and freezer stuffed with food. Under the couch, she had wedged bottles of cheap red wine. Nick joked that we could survive at Natalia's forever. It's like our own private fallout shelter, he said, as we peeled back her bedspread and crawled under the sheets. We didn't concern ourselves with the circumstances of her death. We were young and in love, and the misfortunes of others had nothing to do with us. The flat had 1 bedroom, an office, and a narrow kitchen that opened into a long central room. Heavy drapes shut out the city view. The furniture was outdated, the Persian rugs threadbare and stained. The ceilings and walls had recently been spackled, leaving bone-white spots. On the buffet next to the dining table were stacks of postcards of paintings, many of them torn or chewed at the corners. We found a half-used bottle of anti-anxiety pills in the medicine cabinet, a glass accordion in a folded tablecloth, a baggie of foreign coins in a boot at the back of a closet. In a rickety piano bench, we discovered faded Polaroids of 2 girls at what looked like a family picnic. We were still paying rent for our own apartment and rarely talked of the future. At Natalia's, we'd spend entire weekends pretending we were the last 2 people on Earth. We liked to camp it up. Zombies, I'd say. Meteorite, he'd say. He'd tear off his tie. It's at least 3 miles wide. Sunlight would be breaking through the drapes. Do you see how dark it's getting? What will we ever do, I'd say, unbuttoning my blouse. We ransacked her cupboards, pulled out soapstone animals from Africa. We placed the rhinoceros and giraffe in compromising positions, played like children, pillaging her closets. Then we learned from the downstairs neighbor that Natalia had been a recluse who hadn't left the apartment in years. Something had happened to the sister who brought her supplies, and Natalia had started venturing into the hallway. One day she left the building with a suitcase and somehow plunged to her death from the L platform, just 2 blocks away. We continued to rearrange her furniture and tchotchkes anyway. We still pretended we were secret agents or a strange new semi-human species that had survived the apocalypse. Entire weekends passed before we left the apartment or ate a real dinner, but we studied her photographs a little more closely now. We invented roles for Natalia in our games: captor, hostage, aunt. Twice a week, Nick and I met at Natalia's during my lunch break. We were soaking in Natalia's tub, and Nick handed me a mug of wine. "Don't look at me like that," he said. "You know you're not going back to work." We thought it was a shame Natalia had had to bathe alone in such a wondrous tub. The guy beneath us had said that the morning of her death she said hello to him in the hallway. But she was all strange and spacey, he said. Real happy, you know, the kind of happy people get before they jump. "But the suitcase," I said to Nick. He said she was carrying a suitcase. Why would she if she was planning on ending it all? He pulled a long leg out of the water and slung it over the edge of the tub. "Should have never left," he said. "She had everything she needed right here." I stood and reached for a towel. I'd been hearing noises, and what I heard then was the sound of a wrench knocking against metal inside the bathroom walls. The door creaked open and cold air rushed in. I hopped out of the tub and shut it, but as soon as I turned around, it opened again. Nick crossed his arms over his chest and in a rich falsetto said, "Natalia, stay out, we're naked." I laughed out loud. But then came a sound like steel marbles rolling across the ceiling. I think even Nick had the feeling we weren't alone. He handed me his mug. "Hold this," he said, and when I reached, I slipped on the tile and struck my head. Nick got out and examined my forehead. "It's not that bad," he said, "barely a scratch, but you're going to have a goose egg." "Natalia did it," I said. I was only half kidding. We tightened our towels and made our way to the kitchen. I took a box of crackers and a jar of peanut butter from the cupboard. "I don't know what it is about this place that makes me so hungry," I said. Nick dug into the peanut butter with a spoon. "It's that we didn't buy this food by ourselves." No, it's that it's not real, like there's no world out there." "Precisely," he said. He pulled me close. "Let's never leave." The next morning, I noticed an imprint in the bedding, as if someone had been sitting there watching us. Nick was in the kitchen paging through one of Natalia's books, and he showed it to me. Classical mathematics, he said. No wonder she didn't have any friends, I said. I thought you liked math, he said. He filled one of the miniature cups from her china set with coffee and put it down in front of the extra stool at the breakfast bar. Good morning, Nat, he said. How'd you sleep last night? She's grumpy in the morning, he said to me. Doesn't like to talk. He winked. I think it's time to tell Oscar and Joelle, I said. About the apartment, I mean. Oscar and Joelle were our closest friends. They were the reason we were together, and Oscar believed in ghosts. He was a sort of amateur ghost hunter. I wanted to get his read on the place. Let's have them over for dinner or something. You know how Natalia feels about company, Nick said. Besides, they don't have visas yet. I'm going to be late, I said. Nick put the book aside and got up to make another pot of coffee. We don't start before 10 in the Republic of Natalia, he said. Too bad I don't work for the Republic, I said. If I keep this up, we won't be able to afford to live in the Republic anymore. I had intended the words more lightly. I never asked you to put up the down payment, he said. It didn't need to be that big. So far, we had managed to mostly avoid talking about the purchase or about my paying more toward the mortgage. I was in the middle of several large acquisitions at work, and any conversation about interest rates and balloon payments was likely to turn into an argument about corporate greed in the face of famine and war. I left Nick in the kitchen and went to Natalia's closet to look for something to wear. We almost never stayed overnight during the week. I was traveling more for due diligence, always to other cities in the Midwest or the South. I was constantly shuttling between airports and hotels, between my own apartment, Natalia's, and my office downtown. I felt disoriented, and my excuses for leaving work were growing absurd. Most of Natalia's clothes were outdated. I recognized a purple dress from a photograph of a much younger Natalia in front of a fountain, with a boyfriend somewhere in Europe. We had propped the photo against a lamp on her dresser, and I looked at it again as I changed into the dress. The boyfriend had a goofy grin and thick hair that stuck up in a cowlick, and Natalia threw her head back to laugh. She must have been healthy then. I searched her underwear drawer with dread, wishing I had brought an overnight bag. All of Natalia's undergarments were plain white cotton, many with frayed elastic. I reminded myself that Natalia was dead and wouldn't care if I wore something of hers, but I rejoiced when I found a lacy pair of silk panties that still had a price tag. I wondered when she had brought them and why just one pair. I put them on, and for a moment I was Natalia, untouched for too long. At Fullerton, I waited on the platform for the red line. I checked my email on my phone, only partially aware of a pack of unruly school kids horsing around. One of them slammed into me. I stumbled toward the tracks, and an enormous woman grabbed me and pulled me back. I thought little of this until I was standing in the compartment, and the woman pointed at my phone and said, "That thing's going to be the death of you." I squirmed against the sensation of the silk against my skin. I'm wearing the underwear of a dead lady, I wanted to confess. I arrived at work late for yet another meeting and made up an excuse about a mechanical problem delaying my train. It was a harmless lie, but I had told so many by then I had the uneasy feeling I would be fired. After work that evening, I went out to meet my running club. They were a rugged group that ran even when temperatures dipped below zero. I wanted to be like them. At the waterfront, I tried to keep up. Lake Michigan frogs and gulls struggled against the wind. The man in front of me lagged too. He kept wiping his arm across his brow. He tripped and regained his balance, and then his legs buckled under him. At first I thought he had simply slipped, but he wasn't moving, and several other runners gathered around him. "I don't think he's breathing," a woman said. I stood looking on with the crowd, and then sirens sounded, and before long a paramedic was pushing us back, saying, "Give us some room, folks." The others turned back, but I jogged another mile or two. I didn't know the man, and that's what I told myself all along the lake. He's just a stranger. You don't know him. This sort of thing happens every day. I didn't want to be alone, so I called Nick and went to Natalia's. I pulled off my wet clothes and filled the bath. The refraction of my hands underwater made them appear broken off and reattached at the wrong angle. I ran my fingers over the welt on my forehead. I had fallen, or almost fallen, twice in less than 24 hours, and then directly in front of me a man had collapsed and probably died. I got into bed, but not before putting the soapstone animals away in Natalia's dresser. Not before turning on the bedside light and making sure my phone was within reach. I couldn't stop seeing the man at the lake, his legs giving way. I turned my face to the pillow and tried not to think of Natalia drooling into the same feathers. Then Nick was standing in the bedroom doorway. He held his arms out and made his eyes dull, and I said, "Yes, please. Bring on the zombies."
Okay, that was Rachel Swearingen. Thank you, Rachel. Wonderful stuff.
Next up, we have performer Natasha Mijares.
Natasha is an artist, writer, and curator, and educator. Her debut poetry collection, Violent Wave, is forthcoming from Pank Books. She received her MFA in writing from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Lots of SISC rep this week. Enjoy it. She is exhibited at various international and national galleries. Her work has appeared in Gravity of the Thing, Hypertext Review, Calamity, Vinyl Poetry, and more. Natasha, take it away.
And that was Natasha Mijares. Thank you again.
Yeah, and thank you to all the rest of our performers, of course. We had Anaïs Duplan, Sam Heaps, Rachel Swearingen, and as Jim said, Natasha Mijares. We dropped some links for them. Please check them out. They do great work. And, of course, the Guild.
Of course. We always thank the Guild Literary Complex for being a part of this show. You don't always know what you're going to get. They don't always know what they're going to get. But here we are.
They're still in.
They're still in. And we're here, and we appreciate it. And once again, check out those links.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time. Our next show is going to be the last Thursday of July. Should be pretty awesome. Come check us out. Until then.
We have a little something special, so you might even see us before then. So keep track of us and what we got going on our Facebook page.
Might have a secret little June show popping up,
we'll
so
see.
keep an eye out.
Until then.
All right. Yeah, have a good night.
Call it how it is.